we'll point it out. All right? Give me a couple minutes since we're here. All right, since we're here, it's become very cliche to talk about our own personal passage of time as a journey of life. The image, the idiom is obvious and it's natural to talk about journeying along life and the roads that we walk and the roughness of the path that we walk, the ease of the path that we walk, all the junk in the path that wasn't our fault, that we have to climb over. There's 1,000 stories you can tell about your own journey or that of your children or that of your parents. The path that you were born to walk or that you've birthed others to walk. We had a student once, she was probably 19 maybe, 19. A cute little gal, one of those and for the semester program and students talk to students and where are you from, who's your mom and dad? She said, I don't have. My mom and dad are dead. Everybody figured car wreck, something. When she was 13, her dad killed her mom and then himself. Junk in the road that she didn't put there, but she has to climb over, yeah? And somehow make sense of the path as it goes. And I'm sure you know similar stories, maybe even worse. I don't know. And we've been tracking really the last 2 weeks, but mostly the last 2 or 3 days, this path that Jesus travels up and over the Mount of Olives from Galilee, as the Gospels say, resolutely set your face to Jerusalem. He knew what was coming. Even though the others didn't want to understand it or know it. We have in Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, who was born and raised just over that end of the Mount of Olives, with a view toward the wilderness, toward that awful chasm of the Rift Valley and the twisted route coming up. A place called Anathoth. Jeremiah says this, chapter 6, stand by the pathway and look out and ask where the ancient pathway is, where the good way is. Remember, good is a term from the Garden of Eden. Where the good way is, and walk in it. And there you will find rest for your souls. Jeremiah knew physically, tangibly on the ground, the ways that were good and safe to go and those that weren't, and he uses that. You know the right way, he says. You have Torah. You have the instruction from God. You know what it should be. Let's walk in it. And for Jesus, that pathway took him all the way to the cross. And he knew that ahead of time. He comes over the Mount of Olives. You can see the tower there, the White Russian, Church of the Ascension. To the left of it, a bit of a town, there's an Israeli flag flying. Then the mountain takes a bit of a dip. That's the crossing point, the low spot. Up and over the top, the triumphal entry probably from that dip point through the church with the onion domes. We were there this morning, weren't we? The Mary Magdalene Church. Into the city of Jerusalem. He likely enters Jerusalem climbing the steps that we sat on, where later that week he's going to expose the not lack of belief that the Pharisees have, the lack of being willing to do what they say others should do. Yeah, they knew what to do, they just themselves didn't. Sometime during that week, right up along the top there, tips over the money changers' tables, the institutional power base of heart and soul in Judaism. He tips it over, kind of makes a name for himself, and then withdraws early to have a Passover meal. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all call that a Passover meal. John says Jesus dies as the ninth hour of the afternoon, the moment when the Passover lambs are being sacrificed in the temple courtyard as the Lamb of God, the sacrificial lamb. Matthew, Mark, and Luke say he eats the meal. John has him die the afternoon before the meal. Scholars have debated the point. One solution is to say that he was working on a different calendar, that he adopted perhaps the Essene calendar that allowed him to have the Passover meal, a formal one, early, and still be the Passover lamb sacrificed when the lambs were being sacrificed. I'm not sure how to work it out. Father Bargil Pixner, of late, the Benedictine father, who was up here at the Dormition Abbey just next to our campus, excavated on our campus grounds and found a gate in the wall that he identifies as the Essene Gate, and posits that there was a community of Essenes, the Dead Sea Scroll people living on Mount Zion, and that Jesus participated in the meal with that community, subjecting himself to their calendar so he could be the Passover lamb as well. It's a debated point. In the end, he's both. He fulfills the instruction to have the meal, and he is the lamb. Which adds to the drama, of course. Because if Jesus is on the cross when the Passover lambs are being sacrificed in the temple, and the sun goes down, it's Passover. The body has to come off the cross, or hung on the cross alone for the next day and a half or 2 days. And Joseph of Arimathea, like Nicodemus, a follower, says, "Quick, into my grave, it's nearby." Not time to prepare the body properly. The women come back in a couple days to do that, right, on Easter Sunday. Stick him in the tomb, and then Joseph, quick, home, mikveh bath first, clean, you've touched a dead body. Sit down at the Passover meal. And the liturgy we know pretty well. And the youngest son says what? Why is this night different from all other nights? You know the Passover liturgy? The young son on the normal Passover meal, every year. Why is this night different from all other nights? And the liturgy talks about God's mighty hand rescuing Israel from Egypt. And I wonder where Peter was, I wonder where John was, I wonder if Mary and Lazarus ate a meal that night up in Bethany. Why is this night different from all others? And sense something perhaps about the Son. Okay. I've said all I have to say. Easter is coming. But you don't get Easter until you get the journey of life to get you there. And Jesus took it. We're going to have communion at 6 at the hotel. I'll show up a little early just to make sure things are right. And